Another weekend down, another weekend where college football did not upset. Well, there might have been an upset or two, but it did not upset on paper as everything transpired. As a college football fan, I was licking my chops. I was happy. It was a great weekend for college football. It really was. Starting out on Friday, incredible game, BYU, Oklahoma State. My Oregon Ducks put out a victory, and then going into Saturday, two of the biggest games that transpired end up being back-to-back SEC matchups. Go figure, the SEC rules. But we're going to dive deep into those two games. But first, I'm your host, Matthew Raridan, and with me today is David Street.
Hey guys.
And you guys are tuning in to Total Sports Talk Beyond the Light. So, David, let's start with the first game that transpired in the afternoon, and that was Tennessee and Alabama. Alabama had a tough task going into Neyland. It's not an easy place to play whatsoever. I remember just a couple years ago, they went into Neyland, and we saw what happened there against Hendon Hooker in this Vols team. Well, it almost looked like the exact same thing happened. Tennessee pulling off the upset victory, upset to some, upset to maybe not upset to others, but nonetheless, 24-17. Were you surprised at all by this game?
No, not at all. I know Tennessee was technically the underdog, but this is not the same Alabama team that tortured Tennessee for 15 years in a row under Nick Saban, and now Tennessee has beaten Alabama 2 of the last 3 years. Now, don't get it twisted. Um, for Tennessee, beating Alabama will always mean something, but this just does not have the same overall impact when they beat Tennessee a couple years ago with guys like Hendon Hooker and I think his name was Jalen Hyatt.
Jalen Hyatt, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Jalen Hyatt. Because back then, Tennessee exercised demons. It was the first time in 15 years that they had finally beaten Alabama, so that was a much more meaningful victory. Whereas for this one, it just I don't know. It was just more like, hey, it feels good to beat Alabama, but it just did not have the same impact as it did before. And I tell you what, I remember on the show I talked about how Jalen Milroe. I think I said that he was the best player in college football, or I said that he should be atop the Heisman list. I was saying very positive things about him. Well, now it seems that ever since that, he has just kind of regressed. And once again, he just did not have a great game at all. He was 25 for 45, I think, a pick. Well, two picks actually, and a touchdown. And Tennessee's offense wasn't great either, minus Samson. But once again, Tennessee's defense has been showing up. And I think we are at a point now where we can confidently say that Tennessee does have an elite defense, top five defense.
Oh yeah, the Vols have a very heavily touted defense. I would definitely say, and they have a good recipe for success. Give Dylan Sampson the ball. I mean, let the guy run. Let him do his best, Forrest Gump, and let him run because that's their identity right now. Until Nico could really find himself, if that form that we've seen him do before can come back, just give it to Dylan Sampson because he shows out time and time again, and I've been impressed watching him. But Milroe, to second on what you were saying there, I also on this show have talked really high about Jalen Milroe, but this is typical college football because Milroe had great success in the early weeks when you're playing non-conference games, when you're playing a bunch of nobodies. Granted, Milroe did have huge success against Georgia in the first half, so I don't want to discredit that. But now we're starting to see you're in your conference play, and your play is not how we were seeing earlier in the year. It's a typical college football moment there. But Jalen Milroe and Alabama, they've got a lot of question marks. They've got to go back to the drawing board here because it's starting not to look like how well they did that first half against Georgia. David, what do you think they really need to fix to get back to that form?
What does Alabama need to do?
Yeah.
Well, most important thing is that they need to fix their defense. As I said before, defense was Alabama's bread and butter under Nick Saban, but the last 3 or 4 weeks they have just been getting carved up. Nico, I don't think had a particularly great game, but we talk about Dylan Sampson. Um, or you talked about Dylan Sampson carving them up. I guess I mentioned Dylan Sampson as well. But even with Nico not having the best game, he still had a pivotal moment with Brazel.
Yeah.
Remember, it, a touchdown in a game like that with everything on the line. That, not saying that never happened under Nick Saban, but that hardly ever happened under Nick Saban. Once Alabama was in control, once Alabama had the lead with the game winding down, you just knew that Alabama was not going to relent. And I mean, I know. It just kind of goes without saying that this is not the same Alabama team. And I think, and not to sound mean here, but I think some Alabama fans were understandably delusional about their team coming into the season, and now they're entering November with multiple losses for the first time since 2007.
Yeah, and that was Saban's first a year there. So
Yeah,
that just shows you the
I guess
dominance Alabama had.
I guess DeBoer's on the right track, right?
Yeah.
Because he's also first year coach, multiple losses going to November.
Yeah, yeah. So his next 17 years, look out, SEC.
Yeah.
But well, I sat on here and I talked really high about Nick Sheridan and just his offense coming from Washington as well, coming here to Alabama, and things were clicking. They were looking good. Whether I jinxed them or not, you can say whatever you want. It has really fallen off. And now we're starting to see, honestly, Jalen Milroe and this offense's true colors, especially when they are facing adversity in that 2-minute drill because, well, Jalen Milroe, he threw that key interception, his second of the game, that just really it cost them the game, and it's you can't be making mistakes like that, and that's what happens when you try to throw flat foot and you make errors, and well, Jalen Milroe did just that, and uh, I just keep seeing the image over and over and over again. And no, I'm not talking about the interception. I'm talking about that poor kid in the stands trying to light that cigar, David. I know I sent you the video, and I just keep seeing it everywhere I'm online. It's like they keep showing it over and over again. But hey, kid has 5 seconds of fame over here trying to light a cigar at Neyland. And David, what were the exact words you told me?
I think I said something along the lines of, you know, why is this guy lighting it with the footband on? I don't know if I asked the question, but I said something along those lines.
That and we all had our first time.
Oh
And
yeah,
so
I did say that.
it,
We all had our first time. So in a way, I get it. But to that Tennessee fan, if you ever stumble across the show, a couple things. All right, one, you barely had any fire on your match. Okay, and in an environment like that where everybody's moving around, a match is not the best thing to use. In that case, you should have used a torch lighter. And by the way, buddy, take the footband off. All right, that's there mostly for decoration. Just take the
exactly.
footband
Yeah.
off.
I know we all want to look like a Billy Badass, especially at Neyland, lighting up a big puff, but you're caught on TV, bud. You were caught red-handed, probably trying to show off for the girls. I get it. It's college, but now you just look like a rookie. Next time, though, I expect you to be a pro. David Street's got you handled as long as you aren't playing the Gators, okay?
Boy.
But the second game that took place was my oh my. This was down in Austin. College game day was there. All eyes, all pretty much all the stars were there. I was watching the game and I couldn't believe all the stars are there. Of course, you had your Matthew McConaughey's, your Glenn Powell's. I mean, the list goes on. Joe Rogan was there. I don't think Joe Rogan knows anything about football, but he
I
was
didn't
there.
know. I mean, other than wrestling or whatever it is Joe Rogan's into, I didn't even know he was into sports.
I mean, Joe Rogan's very intelligent, but yes, he's mainly into mixed martial arts. He's UFC commentator. That's
M-
why I joke. He
MMA.
probably
Okay,
doesn't.
yeah.
He probably doesn't even know anything about football. But hey, he lives in Austin. His studio's in Austin.
I didn't
So
know that.
yeah,
That's cool.
yeah, yeah. So it was cool seeing him there. There was a lot of celebrities there, not just Joe Rogan. A lot of celebrities. And this was a game this was Saturday Night Lights. This is the best of the best. It doesn't get better than this. And if you watched College Game Day, you watched all the predictions, it was Texas. They're the number one team in the country. And ultimately, the Bulldogs came in. The Bulldogs that we're kind of used to seeing And well, they pretty much they dominated this game from the start, winning 30-15. And my oh my, did Sarkisian, Quinn Ewers, and that Texas team look so flustered, David.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question, Matthew. Um, let's say that you had not seen this game. If I had told you that Team A's quarterback threw for 175 yards, completed just around 50% of his passes, had no touchdowns, and threw 3 picks, would you have thought that Team A won the game?
No.
Well, Team A was Georgia, and not only did Georgia win, but they flat out dominated Texas, as you said. You know, the to me, the fact that Georgia was able to win by 15 points despite terrible play from Carson Beck, I think teaches one good lesson, like one very important lesson here, and that is offensive line is key because that's really the only way that you can win a game like that if your quarterback is going to be shit. And right, and Carson Beck was banged up just a little bit, but not nearly as much as Texas was. So to me, that just kind of taught us the important lesson that we all know about and we all should know about is that offensive line will carry you if your quarterback doesn't.
Well, to that point, I sat here just a couple days ago on this very show saying that it looks like to me Georgia is more talented on the skill position, but within the trenches, I had all my marbles in on Texas. Boy, was I wrong. That Texas offensive line, defensive line, you name it, looked like a JV team compared to Georgia. Georgia was manhandling them. I mean, they had 7 sacks. I think that was the whole game, but that was all in the first half. That they were on Quinn Ewers like white on rice. It was crazy to see because no one had manhandled Texas offensive line like that, like they did.
And the fact,
So, yeah.
yeah, and the fact that Sark pulled Quinn Ewers that early, I mean, that just shows how Georgia put the fear of God in Texas's eyes, that they panicked that quickly, right? And then also, I know, I sound salty, not giving Trevor Etienne any credit. All right, he had 3 touchdowns, but that goes back to my point of how the offensive line was key in helping him do that. And also Matthew, and I'm sure you were going to get to it later, but we cannot talk about this Georgia Texas game without talking about the incident, if you know what I mean.
Oh, the infamous flag with some objects being thrown out on the field.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, David. Actually, I'll let you take it on that incident.
Yeah. So, first of all, in my opinion, it was a horrible call. Like the pass interference, I don't think there was any pass interference. I think that was an interception. So the refs made a huge mistake there. However, that being said, I think we all understand that bad calls happen all of the time because refs are not perfect. And Matthew, there is a difference between me and you watching a game on TV because our vision because we can see things on our TV screen that referees cannot. Whereas referees are in the middle of the chaos of the game, and so they're not able to see as much. But regardless, it was still a bad call. But as I said, bad calls happen all the time, and the fact that the fans got rewarded for bad behavior is absolutely insane to me. Okay, I saw a very funny comment on YouTube, and it said something to the effect of Saints fans. Why didn't we think of this when they got screwed against the
The
Rams
Rams,
a
yeah.
few years ago, right? Like why didn't we think of this? So yeah, it was a bad initial call. But again, bad calls happen all the time, and the
Yeah.
Texas fans they basically set a precedent. Oh, bad call. Well, we'll just throw crap on the field, and we'll get the call reversed in our favor.
Yeah, we'll just pout, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah, they got the university got fined. I saw today, $250,000. But I know you're not a huge fan of him. You have your opinions of him, but I'm sure you stood by Kirby Smart's comments on the situation, and that's the exact word that he used was the president. That by them throwing out and whining objects on the field, it went their way. And so Kirby Smart, talked about that, and I know he said that it felt like the refs kind of didn't want them to win the game, whatever you may think, but I stand by his comments on that subject because it's true that there's a fine line there. Players can pout all they want; they do that all the time, trying to sway the refs. But when you have fans doing that and they're actually throwing objects on the field, you have crossed that line. And the fact that the refs gave in is unheard of.
Well, yeah, it's no secret that obviously I'm not a fan of Kirby Smart at all, but yes, he was absolutely right. And the thing is, if the Texas fans had not thrown any garbage onto the field, they would have garnered a ton of sympathy. Like I said, the pass interference call was absolutely atrocious. There was no pass interference at all.
Yeah.
But as you said, they crossed the line. And once you throw objects onto the field, all sympathy is lost.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And this Georgia team winning at 30-15. You look at the stats, and it's not pretty for them really offensively. I mean, they only had 14 first down versus Texas's 19, but that also contributes to how well Georgia's defense was because once they got the lead, Texas was playing catch up, so they had to do a lot more. So that's why a lot of those stats may go in Texas's favor. I know the total yards was pretty even there, but yeah, like you said, Team A with 3 interceptions, and one of those was in the red zone, maybe two, but one for sure. It was such an ugly game to start the game. I mean, it was horrible because it was turnover after turnover. I'm like, oh my gosh, is this how it's going to be the entire game? But Georgia, with the experience and the pedigree that they have with their recruitment and all that, it makes sense that they won the game. I have to say that. I know I picked Texas, but it makes sense, David.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not surprised one bit that Georgia won. I mean, I might be surprised in the manner in which they won, but as I said before, this seems to always happen. Every time Georgia under Kirby Smart gets doubted, they always come out on top. This reminds me a couple years ago when Georgia came into uh uh oh wait, no, sorry. I think 2000 it was 2022. Tennessee was number 1 at the time. Okay, I think Tennessee came in. All right, I'm remembering now. Tennessee came into Georgia as the number 1 team in the country. Tennessee was favored in that game, and Georgia whooped them 27 to 13. And then also, where was I going with this? Ugh. I had another good point to make, but it'll come back to me.
Yeah, yeah, and I totally get it. I totally get it. That Georgia team, when they had Nick Chubb and Sony Michelle in the backfield, how they didn't win a national championship is beyond me because that was one incredible team. I mean, they came up that short because I'm pretty sure that's the year that Tua threw it to Devontae Smith to win the game for Alabama in the national championship. So I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure that was that team there. So but Georgia, they're doing Georgia things.
I remember what I was going to say. Did you see that that picture that's gone viral? It's a picture of Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning sitting on the bench, just looking absolutely shell shocked.
Yeah.
That was the perfect summary of the game right there.
It was, and that was leading into halftime. That's it. Really felt like that game was over going into halftime because the morale just got sucked out of the stadium because they were being embarrassed on national TV. And Texas now, like you said, it's like, wow, okay, they already pulled their starting quarterback. What is going on? Are they have an identity crisis? Because this is the number 1 team in the country. This isn't, granted, Nick Saban did it in the national championship game, that very one I just talked about, where Tua ended up coming in for Jalen Hurts and won the game on a walk-off touchdown, okay? But that's Nick Saban we're talking about
Yeah, but
making that.
also, in fairness, didn't Saban do that toward the end of the game when his team clearly needed a spark?
Yes. Well, it was after halftime, I want to say, actually. I
Okay.
think it was going out at
Well,
halftime.
it still wasn't that early. He didn't pull the
Yeah.
plug immediately the way that Sark did.
Yeah, and your season's on the line in the national championship game. This was a little eerie because,
Yeah.
well, why are you doing that? You're the number 1 team in the country, but maybe he thought it was going to give him some type of spark, but it didn't. It's I mean, it started to, but then it phased out because he got sacked. But yeah, that viral picture is going around of them just looking totally shell shocked. So Georgia, they're now number 2 in AP pool. They're back up there. They're relevant again.
which I don't agree with at all. Like, Oregon number one, I think everybody can agree with that. How the hell do you not have Penn State number two when Penn State's also undefeated? But that can be for another discussion.
Yeah, the good old idle week always has implications, but these AP polls don't matter. It'll matter. The college football committee it'll matter later, but the AP polls right now don't really seem to matter to me as much. So,
Fair.
but last but not least, we are done with college football for this episode, and for all you Yankee fans out there, I know you were hiding for 15 years or so. You have made it to the World Series. Congratulations. Here's your trophy. But it's the Yankees. It's weird seeing it because the Yankees are probably one of the most relevant teams in all of sports. They're like the Dallas Cowboys. They're always being talked about. They are a big market team. They are worth several $billions. Okay. It's the New York Yankees. They're one of the most famous teams of all times. It is weird to think 15 years since they made it to the World Series, but here they are making it. Chances are they're going to be facing off against the LA Dodgers. This is pretty much going to be the battle of what is it? JP Morgan Chase Bank, and who's another big bank out there because it's all about the Benjamins in this
Bank of
World Series.
Bank of America.
Yeah,
You
so
got to go with America's Bank.
yeah, so that's pretty much what this World Series is going to be. I mean, then you combine these all these contracts, you're over $1 billion just between the two teams. So, but there is a lot of stars on both teams. We will preview the World Series. The Dodgers have yet to win, so I don't want to assume things, but I'm gonna kind of assume things. But yes, the Yankees making it to the World Series is a pretty big deal. Uh, some fans aren't going to like it, David. But I mean, what are your thoughts on Yankees making it?
Well, my thoughts on the Yankees making it is that, and this is going to sound cliche, but they're the New York Yankees. Um, they spend so much money. They spend the kind of money that would make you expect them to be in the position that they are in right now. And kudos to them. They won the games that they needed to win. And if there's one simple way that I can describe the Yankees, at least against the Indians and the ALCS, it was the Soto and Stanton show.
It really was indeed. If Judge gets that spark, I mean, that team could be crazy. And yeah, we talk about them being a big market team and them, spending to try to get where they're at now. It took them 15 years, so they have failed a lot because within those 15 years, some of the smaller market teams of the likes of the Royals, the Rangers end up making it. Cleveland made it to the World Series. There's a lot of smaller
Mhm.
teams that
Yeah.
have made it to the World Series since the Yankees did in '09. So the Diamondbacks last year, I know that's the NL, but still, there are a lot of smaller market teams that have made it. So sometimes it's not all about spending the money, but this year's World Series is going to be about spending the money.
Oh yeah. I mean, last time I checked, the Dodgers were up 6-1, and assuming that lead holds out for the Dodgers, Matthew, I find it hilarious that we're about to get a World Series uh, between two clubs with probably the most hated managers, at least from their fan bases. Because how many times every year do we see Yankees fans chant, "Fire Aaron Boone," and then how many times do we see Dodgers fans chant "Fire Dave Roberts"?
It's a good amount.
Yeah, which I guess is somewhat understandable because when you're the manager of a team with a loaded roster and a buttload of cash, expectations for you are going to be higher than for other managers out there. So it is understandable in a way, but it's also pretty funny.
Yeah, it's the expectations are always also going to be high when you play in a big market town. So you're managing a big market with the Los Angeles Dodgers, same thing with the New York Yankees. So it, not just anyone can do that job. So I will give them the credit where credit's due. Not anyone could do that job. You have to have thick layer of skin like an onion, and you also have to perform, because if you aren't, your your job is gone.
Yeah.
So
And then also, I think, in my opinion, baseball is probably one of the few sports where coaching or managing actually matters. It's not like, it's not like basketball. It's not like the NBA, where whoever has the advantage on talent is clearly going to win. In baseball, the manager has to decide what lineup he's going to put out there. He has to decide what pitcher he's going to throw in there, and things like that. Well, because we have two of the most talented teams in the majors potentially meeting up again, this is we understand that the Dodgers have not won their game yet, but we're going to assume that they're going to win the game. So, assuming that does happen, and you have two managers, or excuse me, you have two teams with two managers who are notorious for choking despite having all that talent, this really does seem like it's going to be a World Series where who is going to out talent the other team?
yeah, absolutely. And if you haven't seen the movie Moneyball, I urge you to watch it, because baseball is analytics, it is chess, it is everything. And there is so much more that goes into baseball than a lot of other sports out there. So, yes, talent does play into it, but also decision making. That's why I talk about it being chess as well. It's constantly back and forth. So, you have to keep up with the curve. So I urge you to watch that movie. So, but yeah, Yankees making it to the World Series, and I have a feeling by the time we do our next episode, we will be talking about how the Dodgers made it to the World Series. So stay tuned for that. But that is about all we have today, folks. Appreciate you guys tuning in for this recap of college football over the weekend. There were several predictions we were right on, and several where we were wrong on. But nonetheless, these two games that we talked about put up quite a good game. It was nice to watch, and there's going to be plenty more of those coming up in the weeks to come. So stay tuned for that. Continue to hit that like and subscribe button, share these videos, and also catch us in the comment section. We urge you to be there, and we look forward to hearing what you have to have. But until next time, guys, we are rounding third, and we are headed for home.